you know, like trying to get inside their fucking brain, you know, like someone like fucking Hillbilly's brain or anybody's fucking brain for that matter, and just say like, what the fuck's going on here? What, you know, why is it so fucking hard to convince these cunts? You know, I find it amazing. If someone was trying to convince me of something, what the fuck's going on here? Show me the evidence. Why is it so fucking hard to convince these cunts? Make up my fucking mind. And if I want more fucking evidence, I find it amazing. Fucking more evidence. You know, and I would go down that fucking path, and I wouldn't be so pig-headed about it. But these cunts just put up the fucking wall of fucking stupidity.
I fucking hate that.
I know. That's what amazes me. I've never come across so many fucking hard heads before in my fucking life, especially fucking like Hillbilly and fucking, you know, True Empiricism and fucking G-Man and all the likes of those.
Hey, you know who I bumped into today and had a really good chuckle at him? Warrior Hebrew Perry, something like that.
Yeah.
This guy was a fucking hilarious clown, man. That was funny.
Oh, you haven't? You know, I met him 3 months ago, right? And you should. It's a pity it wasn't fucking recorded. It was in a fucking old hangout, and everybody was fucking cacking themselves laughing, and I was going hammer and tong at this cunt, and you know, like he wanted to kill me and fucking this and that.
Yes, that's the guy.
You know. And the more he said that, the more I fucking went after him. And everybody in the room was going, you know, they were laughing their fucking heads off, right?
Yeah.
And then, like today, you know, like he still talks to me, and I call him a fucking nigger and all sorts of shit, you know. And he can't do nothing about it. But he's quite entertaining. He's very, you know, especially when you can abuse the shit out of him, and he throws it back at you.
Well,
and
today,
you know, like,
today he was out of control because he was in my hangout, and he rage quit my hangout, just out of there, and then he went straight to Goran's hangout, and I closed my hangout and I went to listen to Goran, not knowing that he was in there. But it wasn't Goran, it was Bob's, one of them anyway. Somebody was live, so I went and I listened in, and he just went from mine to theirs, and he was going on about me. And then, you know, 20 minutes later, he was doing exactly the same thing in this hangout that I was listening to as he was doing in my hangout, and turning everybody into, you know, against him because he's such a freak.
Oh yeah, he floats around. I'm surprised you haven't run into him before.
Yeah, I'm surprised too. But I ran into two crazies today. One was that guy Warrior Perry. Yeah. What the fuck? Everybody's got like two names. So it's Warrior, Hebrew, Perry. Okay. And the other one, crazy. Yeah, there's another guy, crazy, off his rocker. Lyserge, he calls himself.
Oh yeah. He can talk the fucking pants off anybody. That guy.
I know, but he talks such shit.
Yeah.
It's funny stuff, and but what's not the funny stuff is not that he talks shit, you know, big deal, but the way he gets so incensed, and he has to love his own voice and keep his own voice going, and nobody else can talk, and if anybody talks and they differ from his view, oh my god, watch out.
You should have seen the fucking hangout like I was in yesterday. It was those guys normally go in there, but they weren't in there this particular time. But there's a guy called D-Beck. Have you come across him yet?
Yes.
You wait until you see him and me fucking go
I haven't come across him personally, but I've certainly listened to him.
Oh yeah, you wait until fucking. I was in a room with him yesterday, and he didn't know it was me when I came in. And then he goes, what the fuck's he fucking doing in here? And that's all you need to say to me. And then I fucking started on him straight away. I didn't even have a breath. I fucking started on him straight away. And I gave it to him. I gave it to him for about an hour and a half, and then then I left, and I think he left too.
You didn't stop for an hour and a half.
Yeah, it was me, Goran, D-Beck. Who else was in the fucking room? Oh, fuck, I can't remember now. There was two other people too. Down was sleeping, as per
Okay, well, that
usual.
doesn't count. But I mean, he's in the room, but he doesn't count. Okay, so he doesn't have a vote.
Jake was there. Jake was there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think fucking Lyserge did pop his head in, but I can't. Yeah, I think he fucking did, but he didn't say anything because, you know, like, you can't say anything when I'm talking and I'm giving fucking D-Beck fucking shit.
Right.
Because I love giving him fucking shit. Like, he's got a Scottish accent. He's born in Scotland, but he reckons he's not from Scotland. And I said, what town you from? And he lives in Scotland.
And he's born in Scotland, he lives in Scotland.
Yeah, exactly. And I says, okay, if you're not born in Scotland, what fucking town you from? And he typed the town in. This is going back about like 4, 5, 6 months now.
Yeah.
And he typed it in, and I Googled it, and that town's in Scotland. And he goes, yeah, he says, but it's not part of Scotland. I says, well, according to fucking Google it is. It's a bit like saying, oh, Vancouver's not fucking in Canada. It's like, well, if it's not in Canada, where the fuck is it?
Yeah.
You know, some people are just fucking brain dead. That's all it is, you know. He just doesn't want to call himself fucking Scottish, you know. He calls himself something else, and I just find it fucking hilarious.
What the hell is that? I mean, most Scottish people I know are so nationalistic that they love Scotland.
Oh, no, he's not. No, matter of fact, he does. I can't remember the name of the fucking. Oh, what's it called again? If I remember the name, I'll give it to you. You can go Google it yourself.
Yeah, why don't I do that?
Oh man, it was fucking. When he said that, I said to myself, "Oh, here we go, another fucking slow learner on my hands."
Yeah.
Yeah. And then everyone else started fucking Googling it and then they were saying, no, it's definitely in Scotland. And then I was putting road signs up. It's like, yep, even the road signs disagree with you. I says, if you're not living in fucking Scotland, you know, where's your fucking house? You know, like, where do you think it is?
Yeah,
and he reckons, you know. And then people are asking him, saying, "Well, if it's not in fucking Scotland, where are you?" And it's a bit like saying, "Oh, where are you from, Sydney?" And you say, "I'm from Vancouver." And I says, "Oh, is that in Canada?" And he'd go, "No, Vancouver's in fucking Vancouver." Yeah. Where are you from? Montreal. Where's that? Is that in fucking Canada? No, that's fucking that. I'm in Montreal. So, well. You know, where are you from? New York. Oh, is that in America? No. New York's in New York. Yeah, it's not in America.
Yep. When people stop figuring out how to make any sense, they make it worse for themselves. That's all
I know. When he said that was it. It was game on for me. I'm dealing with a fucking slow learner. I might as well get my money's worth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if they're going to say they're not there, let me just see if I can find out if I've got it on this computer. Hang on a second. Fucking hell, what now? I wish I could remember the name of the fucking town that he was from. It's a 4-letter word. I just can't think of it. Hang on a second.
Get on it. Get on the computer.
Fucking hang on a second. Hang on.
What are you doing?
I'm just going through and seeing if I can find. that town where he said he's from. But
all right, I just want to cut old Daniel Dennett into the picture here. This is a picture of the gentleman who's going to be talking to us today about breaking the spell of religion. Because you know what? It is a spell, it can be broken, and this gentleman, a professor, will tell you how and why you should. So, hello everybody. I just want to mention that we have spoken about two crazy crazies that we met today. Number one is Lysurge. Lysurge, if you're listening and you want to come in and defend your craziness, or even better, if you want to come in and preach your craziness, you're more than welcome. I need to summarize for the people out there who don't know who you are, what it is that you say or said to me that, in my mind, puts you in the category of loony. That's one. The second one was Hebrew warrior Perry. I think I got it right. Another person who is, well, a person who is guided by a mythical figure that never existed named Jesus Christ. It could have been the gingerbread man, but in his case he chose Jesus Christ. And with that information that he uses as his foundation for ethics, common sense, decision making, he thinks that he's entitled to teach other people about the world and how it works. Crazy people don't have that faculty. They don't have that entitlement. So either of you two are invited to come in and defend yourselves, or spread the word, show people what you got and why I think that you are fucking nuts. So let's get back to the hangout and see if we have made any headway. Hello hangout, have we made any headway? All right, there's a satellite orbiting this planet, and it is sending a signal directly to Bulldog's computer from me. Isn't that cool? It's text. I mean, it's voice, and it's saying, "Bulldog, are you fucking there?" So that would tell me that he is not. Well, I'll tell you what, there is a lull. Why don't we introduce Daniel Dennett? We can let him get talking. We can listen and we can stop and we can review. Anybody in the anybody watching in the YouTube outside chat there, feel free to ask questions and make comments. And don't be Christian, because if you're Christian, that means you're fake. You're a hoax. You're not being honest to yourself or to anyone else. So here we go with Professor Daniel Dennett.
After 9/11, I was thinking about the huge role that religion plays in our lives and trying to figure out where I thought it was going. And I thought, I don't know, I have any idea. I have no idea what's going to happen to religion in the 21st century, and I think that's pretty scary. And I looked around, and it seemed to me nobody else did either. And I thought, well, why not? One of the reasons is that we're not studying religion with the same intensity that we're studying the economy, fossil fuels, global warming, all the other big phenomena, the big problematic phenomena in the world, and we should. And so the title of my book really is about, let me see if I can go back to it here. Yeah. The spell I want to break is the spell which says, thou shalt not study religion objectively, scientifically. I think whatever you want to happen to religion, your best chances of getting what you want is to understand the phenomena better so that you can fix it or destroy it or change it. Whatever you want to do, it pays as always to gather more scientific knowledge of it. I just want to dramatize how little we know about what's going to happen to religion by giving you 5 scenarios. There's others we could have chosen. These are 5 scenarios. One of them might be true. Just think about it. See which one you think might be true. Some people think that, you know, the Enlightenment is over and religion is sweeping the planet, and it's going to continue sweeping the planet until one religion goes to fixation. Now, which religion is that going to be? It's not clear. It might be Christianity, it might be Islam, and it might happen in a few weeks or months, or it might happen in a few years. This is the current rough breakdown of religions around the world. And notice that no matter what religion you are, if you are one, in this audience, I don't suppose there are probably that many that do have a religion, but whatever religion you have, it's the minority. So that more people don't want it to sweep to fixation than want it to sweep to fixation. You might reflect on what that means about the future of this planet. But of course, that's just one scenario. This is not working as well as it should. Another one is that religion is in its death throes. Contrary to what others have said, what we're seeing now are the paroxysms, the dying gasps of religion. And maybe in the lifetime of your own grandchildren, the Vatican City will become the European Museum of Roman Catholicism. and Mecca will become Disney's Magic Kingdom of Allah. Seems a little unlikely, I know. But bear in mind that the Hagia Sophia, it started off as a church, then it became a mosque, and today it's a museum. It's worth remembering. So, but there's 2 hypotheses. Here's another one. Maybe religions are going to change. They're going to transform themselves into sort of creedless moral teams with pageantry, with songs, with traditions, with colors, and they may specialize in one moral effort or another, but, you know, leaving out the creeds. Maybe it'll all be just sort of evolving pageantry. That's another prospect. It might happen. Who knows? Another possibility might be that religion will simply sink into the background. It will diminish in prestige and visibility, rather like smoking. And that although right now it's very high status to be very religious, it maybe the religious people will be sort of like the people huddled out in the rain outside buildings, you know, having their cigarettes. Seems unlikely, but then there's another prospect to consider. Then, of course, there's one more prospect to consider, and that is Judgment Day arrives. Now, oddly enough, or not so oddly, according to Newsweek magazine, the majority of Americans believe this one. 57%, according to a recent poll. It's worth reflecting on that. Now, with all those different hypotheses, the important thing to remember is all but one of them at most is wildly wrong, and nobody knows which one's right. Nobody. I don't know, and you don't know. Nobody knows. That's why we really should study religion as intensively as we can to try to get a better handle on this, because there may be something we'll want to do to try to steer the phenomena in the future. Now, consider this wonderful dairy cow. What a magnificent beast this is. Who designed it? Well, some people say God designed it. But of course, the dairy cow is an interesting, as a domesticated animal, it's an interesting amalgam of design processes. For many millions of years, this is its ancestor, the aurochs. It was a wild animal, and it was designed by the process of natural selection, evolution by natural selection, without any help from any human beings. Then it became domesticated, and at first there was no intention to redesign it so much, but just the favoring of individuals in the herd gradually led to the redesign of the animal. And then eventually it became methodically redesigned by animal breeders, as Darwin is wonderful on the transition between methodical design and what he calls unconscious selection, methodical selection and unconscious selection. And eventually, of course, you get an animal which really has been intelligently designed and redesigned. There's been a lot of effort put into trying to reverse engineer the dairy cow and figure out how the parts work and how to make the parts work better. Now, I use that as an analogy because what I'm arguing in my book is the same thing's true of religion. Religions are designed things, and part of their design is unconscious natural selection, not involving human beings at all, really. Part of it is unconscious redesign by human beings, and then there's part of it that's deliberate design by human beings. And that's the story that I want to sketch out for you. That's one of the main themes that runs through my book. In other words, what we're going to do here is recognize that religions are brilliantly designed products. Now, let me pause for a moment, because a lot of people, they hear about my book, they start reading about it, and they say, Dennett wants to destroy religions. And that is not true. I don't know what I think should happen to religion, but I do recognize that they are some of the most brilliantly designed social institutions on the planet. They've been around for thousands of years. We jolly well should understand what makes them tick. We should look under the hood and find out what makes them tick, because maybe we want to use them for something really important. Don't destroy all that wonderful design just because you don't like it. Let's understand it first. So we want to understand their evolutionary history. What we want to do is reverse engineer religions. Now, if Martian scientists came to Earth, they would be mightily impressed with some of the things they saw on this planet. I'm going to show you a few pictures to show you what might attract the attention of Martian scientists. Why do I talk about Martian scientists? Because it helps to make the familiar strange. We're so used to having religion all around us that we tend not to notice what's bizarre or striking about it. It helps if you can sort of adopt a Martian perspective. And I think one of the things that would impress the Martians when they came to our planet would be this. Now, who knows what this is? One person here knows, and I want to thank him from the bottom of my heart, because he sent me this picture. What is it? I've asked you this. Is it a whale? Is it bacteria in a culture dish? No, it's not the Hindenburg. This is what it is. If I can get my thing to work. This is approximately 1 million human beings gathering on the banks of the Ganges in 2001. Probably the largest gathering of human beings in one place ever, as seen from a satellite. Wow. That would have certainly attract the Martians' attention. So would this smaller crowd, or this smaller crowd. My goodness, what an elaborate, expensive, energetic, what a profligate expenditure these events manifest. What on earth can explain them? Among the questions that they would ask is, how does this originate? What's it for? How does it perpetuate itself? Here's another thing that might puzzle the biologists. It might puzzle you. Suppose you go out in the meadow and you see a blade of grass and you see an ant climbing up the blade of grass. Climbs and climbs and climbs, and it falls, and it climbs and it falls, and it climbs and it falls. Like Sisyphus rolling his rock. It's just over and over again till he reaches the very top. You think, what's in it for this ant? Why is this ant doing this? What benefit accrues to the ant from climbing up the blade of grass? Is it searching for food? Is it showing off to potential mates? Is it trying to find its way home? What is it doing, and what benefit accrues to it? And the answer is, no benefit accrues to the ant at all. Well then, what is this behavior then? Is it just a fluke?
Into it.
And the answer is yes, it's just a fluke. It's a lancet fluke. Dicrocelium dendriticum, it's a small parasitic brainworm that has crawled into the ant's brain because in order to continue its life cycle, it has to get into the belly of a sheep or a cow. And it has a higher probability of getting into the belly of a sheep or cow if it gets the ant to drive up to the top of the blade of grass. You know, salmon, you know, they work so hard to get upstream to lay their eggs. And Dicrocelium dendriticum just commandeers a passing ant and treats it like an all-terrain vehicle, drives it up to the top of the... Yeah. That's amazing. I'm going to give you another example. This is Toxoplasma gondii, and it is a parasite of mice. And it has to get into the belly of a cat to continue its life cycle. Now, I wonder what it does. How does it get from the mouse to the cat? It turns the mouse into Mighty Mouse. It makes the mouse bold, fearless. It runs right out into the open, improving its chances of getting into a belly of a cat. There are many other examples. I'm now collecting quite a bunch of them. The people that work in parasitology. This host manipulation is quite a wonderful and a gory and interesting thing. Intelligent design, right? You do have to wonder about an intelligent designer that would pull such cruel tricks. What we have here is a hijacker, a parasite that infects the brain and induces suicidal behavior on behalf of a cause other than one's own genetic fitness. Gosh, that's scary. Does it ever happen to us? Well, I'd like to remind you that Islam means submission. It's the Arabic word for submission. Surrender of self-interest to the will of Allah. But it's not just Islam, it's Christianity too. This is a parchment page that I found in a bookstall in Paris over 50 years ago. It's about 1540. And the Latin says, Semen est verbum Dei sator autem Christus. It's nice. The scribe has put the Greek letters chi rho and then gone on in Latin, and not knowing that the rho was an R, put in an extra R. So that's actually chi rho R-I-S is a slight misspelling of the word Christus. So what does this mean? It means the word of God is a seed, and the sower of the seed is Christ. And all who hear him will get eternal life. Now you might say that's not quite the same idea as the Islam surrender, but it is for many Christians. And in fact, Rick Warren's book has some amazing quotes in it where he says, surrender is the heart of worship. Surrender. And don't, there's another passage here, the heart of worship is surrender, and then get this one. Surrendered people obey God's word even if it doesn't make sense. So it's actually a very common idea in religions. These are ideas to die for. Now there's many of them. Islam is one, Christianity is certainly another. Communism, many people in the last century certainly died and killed for communism or for democracy. We probably all have friends or family members who gave their lives for democracy or justice or freedom. This is an amazing fact about our species. I live in Massachusetts, northern Massachusetts, and right over the border, this is what the license plates say. Live free or die. Now, lovely patriotic motto. And notice that the moose cannot entertain that thought. We're the only species that has sort of room in its head for an idea like this. We're the only species that does anything like this. And this is a remarkable fact. It's visible to biology. And it's explicable by biology too. As I look out, I see a lot of people my age or even older. A lot of you are grandparents. Many grandparents here? Yeah, sure. It's great having grandchildren. How many of you think that the most important thing in your life is having more grandchildren than your next door neighbor? No. But we're the only species that has that attitude. We're the only species that can have something for our summum bonum other than the genetic imperative. How is that possible? Where did we find the elbow room? Where did we find the leverage to break out of that pattern and transcend our genetic imperative and come to think of other things as even more important than having more offspring? And the answer is obvious. It's culture. It's having ideas to die for. How did that happen? It's ideas, not worms, that hijack our brains. And these are ideas that replicate in competition with each other. They're what Richard Dawkins calls memes. That's, of course, from his book, The Selfish Gene. Memes, according to Dawkins, are analogous to genes. They are the replicating informational items. And we can consider their fitness. So we have selfish memes in addition to selfish genes. And of course, as Michael says, we understand that term selfish is shorthand for something which is actually quite precise. These are things that are designed to foster their own replication in greater numbers than the competition. Dawkins famously compares memes to viruses, which are sort of naked genes. There's sort of a bit of DNA or RNA with a protein overcoat. Or as I like to say, a virus is a string of nucleic acid with attitude. That's all. What I mean attitude is, it doesn't carry its own copy machinery with it. It simply has something about the way it's designed that has the effect, when it's in the right circumstances, of provoking its own self-replication, utilizing commandeering the copying machinery of the cell. And Dawkins' brilliant insight is, yeah, and ideas do that too. Once culture exists, once language exists, once there are items, replicating items like words, then they compete for space in brains. And some compete better than others and get themselves copied. First in your own brain. Every time you say that over and over and over, that's another generation. If you have an obsessive idea running through your head, each instance of it is another generation. That idea is making more copies in your own brain. And then sometimes maybe it'll get you to say it to somebody else, and then it'll start making copies in that brain and so forth. And the idea will spread. That's the fundamental idea. Here's a theologian writing, if survival of the fittest has any validity as a slogan, then the Bible seems a fair candidate for the accolade of the fittest of texts. Think of all those Gideon Bibles. Think of all the Bibles in all the different languages of the world that have been translated. I think probably Piper is right. This is probably the fittest text in the world. Even fitter than Rick Warren's Purpose-Driven Life, which has sold 30 million copies. Notice it's important that this is fitness in the precise, hard-bitten evolutionary biology sense of making more offspring. That's all. That's all fitness means in this context. Now, human culture, which is the medium in which this competition goes on, is itself one of the fruits on the tree of life. Let's look for a minute at the tree of life. This is a nice diagram from Science 97. It doesn't look much like a tree from here, but that's because this is a bird's eye view of the tree. You're looking down on the top, and right there in the center we have the root of the tree. That's where Luca is. Oh, what's happened with the rest of my slides? That's very strange. It doesn't work on your machine, Michael. Yeah, too bad. Okay. In that slide there were three, let me go back a few slides. Remind me to run through my slides on the machine next time I do it. You see the three branches of life, the archaea, the bacteria, and the eukarya. Some people would add the viruses now, by the way, as a fourth category. Not quite alive, but sort of alive. And here on the eukarya, we have three species listed out here on the end. It's Coprinus, Homo, and Zea. That's Homo, of course, is us. And the artist has flanked us with two of our nearest relatives on the tree of life. Coprinus, that is to say mushrooms, and Zea, that is to say corn, are cousins, near cousins on the tree of life. But among those species, among the eukarya, there's one species, ours, that has culture in a big way, but there's other species, such as beavers, that make dams, and their dams are artifacts made by mammals, and the Hoover Dam is also an artifact made by a mammal. And there's cultural evolution involved in both cases. But of course, in many ways, the processes are very different. A spider web is an artifact made by an animal, and the World Wide Web, or a power grid, is another artifact made by an animal. And they can be reverse engineered and studied in the same spirit, and brought together under one heading, which is what we need to do. On the left, we see a wonderful artifact made by a bird. It's a bird's nest. On the right, we see an ode to a nightingale. See a first draft. Same sort of things in some ways. Now, obviously, an ode to a nightingale has not been copied from an earlier ode to a nightingale. That would be plagiarism. But, by the way, when I'm teaching evolutionary theory, I often tell my students that one way of getting at the principle of natural selection is it's the principle of plagiarism. Any design that's worth copying, because R&D is expensive, will be copied and copied and copied and then slightly revised and slightly revised. What plagiarists appreciate is the fundamental underlying insight of Darwinism, namely that design is expensive. But if you can save it and then copy it, then it saves you all that design work, and then you can build on the design work. You don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. That's how evolution works. Even human culture gets underway without any insightful design to prime the pump. Now, I think we're running a little late, so I'm going to rush through a bit of this. In the book, I have a sketch of a theory of the evolution of religion, from pre-religion, from our hominid ancestors up through to the present day. And the point of that sketch is not this is the truth, but this is what a theory of religion would look like. Because some people just say, I can't imagine having a scientific theory of religion. I can't imagine how you could get the purchase and have a scientific theory of religion. Well, now they can imagine, because I've given them a sketch of a theory. It's probably not right. Large parts of it, I'm sure, are right. Large parts of it, I'm pretty sure, are wrong. I just don't know which. My point is to do what scientists do. You put out a theory and then say, fix it. Correct it, refute it, replace it with a better theory. That's fine. And at least we know what a theory would be. Now, it begins with something that we share with many of our vertebrate cousins, and pretty much all mammals, I guess. And that's what Justin Barrett calls a HAD, or hyperactive agent detection device. If, well, you don't have snow here, but something that we have back in the East is your dog is sort of snoozing on the hearth, and some snow falls off the roof and lands with a thud outside, and the dog is up in a shot and looking around. Grrr. That's the dog's HAD doing a false alarm. Who's there? Who's there? What do you want? It's supposing there's an agent, something to confront as an agent out there, and it's on hair trigger in all of us for a very good evolutionary reason. In a dog, or a dolphin, or a wolf, or a bear, this orientation response pretty well evaporates after a few seconds. False alarm, back to sleep. But in us, with our echoic brains, with our imaginations, it builds, and it builds, and it repeats. And what started off as just a wild speculation, who's there, who's there? Oh my gosh, did that tree say something? Was it talking? Is that a talking tree? Oh my God, a talking tree. There's a talking tree. Oh my God, a talking tree, a talking tree. Oh my God. hey, Joe, there's a talking tree. Oh, what a talking tree. And round it goes. And pretty soon, at least a few of you think, gosh, maybe there's a supernatural talking tree out in the woods. Now, most of these ideas are pretty stupid, actually. Well, not surprisingly. They're sort of amplified random noise. But a few of them are more memorable, that is to say, more unforgettable than others. Those are the ones that keep making copies in your brains. But your brains are a limited resource, so pretty soon there's competition, and only the most vivid and memorable and grabby of these ideas is going to hang in there in competition. And what do we find? We find in every tribal culture, we find a population of invisible supernatural agents of all kinds. These are the ones that these people believe in. And how long have they believed in them? Who knows? It's very hard to say. It's an oral culture. Now, that's not religion, that's superstition. But those are the wild ancestors of the organized religions of today. A population of imps, goblins, fairies, gods, leprechauns. They compete for rehearsal space, and some of them win. And what are the winners for? They're for occupying the minds they find themselves in, and that's all. I tell people I'm doing an evolutionary theory of religion, and it's like a reflex. They say, oh yes, evolutionary theory of religion. Well, you know, every human group that's ever been studied has religion, so it must be doing us some good. What's it for? What do you think religion is for? Must be for something, because every society has them. And I say, yeah, and every society that's ever been studied also has the common cold. What's that for? The common cold exists for itself. It exists because it can. And the same is true of the superstitions that are the ancestors of folk religion, of organized religion. They're what I call folk religion. So, how are spoken words and folk songs like squirrels, rats, pigeons, and barn swallows? What do those species all have in common? They're not domesticated, but they are evolved to live in close proximity with human beings. They are elegantly evolved to inhabit the same ecological niche with us, but we haven't domesticated them. We don't own them, we don't take care of them. They're wild, but they're a very interesting subset of wild species that have evolved to live with us. The same thing is true of spoken words. They don't require stewards, they don't require guardians. They have plenty of them. We have grammar scolds and language usage mavens. You know, there's William Sapphire and all these people that are always telling us what we ought to say and what we ought not to say. But in fact, such people are strictly unnecessary. Languages can get along very well without them. They will survive just fine. They've survived for thousands of years. All the other languages that are still going strong, most of them don't have any language scolds. Now, it's interesting. You see, written language is different. Written language has to be taught. You have to go to school. You do have to have guardians. Many cultural items require stewardship. Many don't. Folk songs, you can't get them out of your head. Calculus isn't like that. or have maybe here at Caltech, I don't know. But it just might be Caltech's different. But in general, some of our cultural products have to be very assiduously tended to, and fostered, and preserved, and protected, transmitted through the ages. Those are the domesticated memes. The wild memes are the ones like fashions and folk songs and spoken words that just evolve without anybody trying to evolve them. Then, of course, there's every sort of intermediate case. Now, how clever it was of sheep to acquire shepherds. Look what they got for this. They got to outsource all their problems: protection from predators, food finding, health maintenance. And all of this at a rather small cost, some loss of free mating. It's been a tremendous bargain for those sheep. By the way, domesticated animals have smaller brains than their wild relatives. Even normalizing for the animals that have been raised for meat, and so they tend to have heavy bodies. No, use it or lose it is a motto that really applies in evolution. And if you don't need your brain, it goes. And they don't need their brain because they've got stewards. They've got people that are their guardians who are taking care of them. So they can get stupid and fat. So the sheep weren't clever, of course, but it was a very clever move. The nearest wild relatives of the sheep you could probably carry off in a few arcs. But the sheep, there's, I don't know, hundreds of millions of sheep in the world today. It's a huge fitness boost if that's what you care about. The cleverness is not the sheep's cleverness, but it's the cleverness of natural selection itself. This is Leslie Orgul's second rule, quip made by Francis Crick some years ago. Evolution is cleverer than you are. Now, what he meant by this, of course, is not intelligent design, not Francis Crick. And in fact, I think if you want to understand what is illusory, what is, quite frankly, a hoax in intelligent design, if you just understand Orgul's second rule, you can see what's wrong with intelligent design. What Orgul's second rule tells you is that although the process of natural selection has no foresight, no purpose, no intelligence, the products of evolution are brilliant. They are incredibly ingenious. You can reverse engineer them and be staggered with awe at how incredibly ingenious and clever and devious these designs are. But it's not the purposeful intelligence of anybody. Something similar happened to the wild memes of religion. They got themselves domesticated. They acquired stewards who were prepared to devote their lives to their flourishing. But, you know, there's a quid pro quo. Many features of that dairy cow are not so much for the benefit of the cow as for the benefit of the dairy herder. That's the price of domestication. So that when we look at religious memes, at the memes of organized religion, the domesticated memes, we should be on the lookout for rather different selection pressures to have been operating than in the wild days. I got you as far as a bunch of God memes or supernatural entity memes in the wild religion, but now we have to start thinking about the uses of domesticated God memes. One of them that, again, this is speculation, but it's guided by facts and it's subject to confirmation. We can design inquiries and investigations and experiments which can shed light on whether it's true or not. One idea which I've loved for years comes from Julian Jaynes' remarkable, eccentric but brilliant book, The Origins of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. He suggests, that book has about 100 really good ideas and about 1,000 bad ones, but this is one I think of the good ones. He suggests that when cities began to get large, when people began to live in larger groups, decision-making became really onerous and difficult. People just didn't know how to make up their minds. And it was harder than it had ever been before. And so they ended up, sort of in desperation, looking for what he called exopsychic means of decision-making, like flipping a coin, like consulting tea leaves, like throwing the I Ching, like sacrificing animals and looking at their entrails, burning virgins and seeing which way the smoke blows, you know. In fact, there are hundreds of different techniques that evolved back in those days for flipping a coin. A particularly useful one was basically to consult the gods, because that was useful for many reasons. First of all, it got you off the hook. If the decision you made was wrong, well, don't blame me, you know. I'm just the messenger. I got the idea from the God, who can never, of course, contradict you. Nice thing about the idea is that a practice like that can spread without anybody understanding the rationale for it. They don't have to understand the rationale, any more than the sheep have to understand the rationale for domesticating themselves. It's a good idea, but they don't have to recognize it. Same thing is true of these. One of my favorite hypotheses for further exploration is McLennan's hypothesis that shamanic healing rituals, which were very widespread and culturally transmitted, led to the convergent evolution, convergent social evolution. Again and again and again, the shamanic healers discovered, reinvented, and refined basically techniques of hypnotic induction. That what the rituals of shamanic healing are hypnotic induction rituals, and hypnosis has genuine medical benefits. There's many things, particularly for analgesia and for the relief of many psychosomatic or partly psychological conditions. Won't do you much good for a broken leg. But hypnosis has some genuine medical applications where it works well. And back in those days, before there was any other kind of medicine, if you were not susceptible to hypnosis, you didn't have any health insurance. There could be quite a strong selection pressure based on susceptibility to hypnosis. And that could then create a bounce in the genes so that you have a cultural genetic coevolution for susceptibility to hypnotic induction. Now we know, we've confirmed really a similar story already with regard to lactose tolerance in adulthood. Those of us, there are probably a few people here who are not lactose tolerant as adults. Are there any lactose intolerant people here? Yes, you're normal for a mammal. Mammals in general are not capable of digesting milk after they're weaned. We're the only mammals really that can. It's abnormal for mammals but normal for human beings, and it is a genetic change in most of us which can be traced back to those lineages of our ancestors who kept dairy herds and who drank the milk raw rather than fermenting it or turning it into something like cheese. That's pretty well established by Luca Cavalli-Sforza and his colleagues. Then, of course, one that everybody knows is the surrogate police. I like to tell the story about the little town in Maine where I have my farm, and you approach it, and there's a sign on the edge of town that says, you know, welcome to Brooksville, your speed is radar controlled. Somebody says to the chairman of the board of selectmen, he says, that must have been pretty expensive. He says, no, it costs about $5. Just get a piece of plywood and some paint. These are among the uses of domesticated God means. So the claim in the book is that organized religions descended from folk religions. When we became conscious, deliberate stewards, this changed everything. Now, a technical term in my earlier work, which I now harness for pretty heavy lifting in this book, is the idea of a free-floating rationale. This is the reason something happens where the agents in particular don't have to understand it. One of the most vivid and moving cases is actually the cuckoo chick. When cuckoos, you know, they're parasites. The cuckoos do not make their own nests. The mother cuckoo, the female, when she's ready to lay her eggs, she finds a host nest of another species and waits for the female to lay the eggs in that nest. Then when the parents are off getting more twigs or feeding or something, she darts down, lays her egg in the host nest, and then very often she'll push one of the other eggs out. That's just in case the hosts can count. And then she flies away, never returns, never has anything more to do with her egg. The cuckoos tend to hatch quicker than other birds, not surprisingly. And the first thing that baby cuckoo does, it can't see, it's featherless, it's this scrawny little fledgling. When it gets out of the egg, the first thing it does is this, it wrestles around the other eggs and tries to push them out of the nest. And if you've ever seen the video of it, it's absolutely blood-curdling to watch this eggicide happening. Yeah. I don't know what you... Ovicide? Now, you know, that sweet little cuckoo chick, it doesn't understand what it's doing. It doesn't have to understand the rationale. The rationale is there. We all know why it's happening. We know what the reason is for this, but it's not a reason that the cuckoo has to understand or appreciate. It doesn't have to represent that reason. It just has to have enough control in it so that it accomplishes this task for whatever reason it doesn't have to know. That's what I call a free-floating rationale. And of course, in the case of Dicrocelium dendriticum, we had another nice example of that, because the Dicrocelium dendriticum, it doesn't understand what it's doing when it crawls into that ant's brain. It's, I would say, has an IQ approximately that of a carrot. You know? It doesn't need to think it out. It just has to be designed to be the beneficiary. In organized religion, though, things start to change, because now the question of who benefits falls under the tracking of an entirely different set of processes, because now we get a shift from free-floating rationales to represented rationales. Represented where? In the minds of particular human beings, in the minds of the domesticators, in the minds of the priests and the rabbis and the imams and the religious leaders of all kinds. They start tinkering. They become mimetic engineers and re-engineers. They become like the methodical breeders of animals and plants. And now a whole new set of selection pressures arises. The rationales of the stewards are responsive to other goals, goals that evolution by natural selection without human stewards are not responsive to. And that does change everything. I'm going to give you just a few examples of the adaptations of organized religion that you don't find in wild religions, in folk religions, and that play a big role in the elegance of design of contemporary religion. And perhaps the most central and important is what I call belief in belief. Now, some people believe in God. Many people believe in God. Some people believe in belief in God. That's different. If you believe in belief in God, it's because you think belief in God is a really good thing. Gee, I wish everybody did. I wish more people did. Belief in God is a wonderful thing. That's what it is to believe in belief in God. Now, that's different, right, from believing in God. Now, interestingly enough, more people believe in belief in God than believe in God. How do I know that? Well, think about it. With very few exceptions, if you believe in God, you also believe in belief in God. There may be a few people who deeply regret their belief in God. You know? Just, gosh, I wish I didn't believe in God. I wish nobody did. You know? Can't get this darn belief out of me. There probably are a few. I'm sure there are a few. But in general, they're rare. Most people who believe in God also believe in believing God. They think it's just wonderful. But then there's all the people who've lost their faith or never had it in the first place, but who nevertheless, for one reason or another, believe in the belief in God. They think it's really, really important. They hope they can recover their belief in God. They try to spread belief in God. So now the question is, how many more? And here, it's almost impossible to say. Why? Because in organized religion, unlike folk religions, every major organized religion has managed to evolve its creeds and its behaviors in such a way that there's almost nothing you could do that would manifest belief in God as opposed to belief in God. What you do if you believe in God is you say you believe in God. And you tithe, and you go to church, and you pray. That's what you do if you believe in God. So it's become very difficult to say who actually believes in God. Now, sometimes this is just very obvious. How many senators and congressmen do you think really believe in God? They all say they do. They all do whatever they can to make sure that you think that they believe in God. But come on, we know better. Now, yeah, there's another case where the switch of platforms hurts us. Doggone it. Well, that's not quite right. This formula. I don't know what it means, but I believe it's true. Michael's laptop doesn't have the same font or something. This is actually a sentence in Turkish. Or it was before Michael's laptop scrambled it a little bit. And it really doesn't make any difference. See, well, here's what I did. I asked a trusted Turkish colleague to give me a true sentence of Turkish and not tell me what it meant. So he did, and I trust him. And I'll bet $1,000 it's a true sentence of Turkish. And I have no idea what it means. I know nothing about what topic it's on. All I know is it's true. So I don't believe it. I just believe that the formula, whatever it is, expresses the truth. There's nothing mysterious about being in that circumstance. I've just explained how easy it is to get yourself into that circumstance if you want to. Sometimes you get into that circumstance not because you want to, but because you can't do better. Now let's look at another sentence. E equals mc squared. How many of you believe it? Yeah, right. How many of you really understand it? You know, I do pretty well. You know, I know how to do the algebraic manipulations. But I dare say a physicist here could write a little multiple choice exam for me, a devious, devilish multiple choice exam, which I would betray my incomprehension of some of the fine points of this. That's what good multiple choice exams can do. So I semi-understand this. But I believe it's true. Now, what a wonderful thing language permits us to do. It permits us to have a division of labor, or rather, you can put it sort of comically by saying, leave the believing to us lay people and leave the understanding to the scientists. Which isn't quite right, because we don't so much believe as just believe that the proposition is true, whatever it is. Our belief in two is more like our belief in one than we might like to admit sometimes, but that's okay. Even within science, it's quite possible for scientists to use a formula every day in their work and, you know, not really be in full control of what it means. There's people down the hall that know what it believes. They don't have to. That is a legitimate and acceptable division of labor. By the way, I had a funny experience. I gave a version of this talk just a week ago, about a little bit more than a week ago, at Fermilab outside Chicago. In a room with about this large, 500 of the world's great physicists. And I put up E equals mc squared and say, how many of you believe this? Well, how many of you understand it? All the hands go up. But I had the last laugh because one of the physicists present raised his hand and he said, the experimentalists think they understand it, but they don't. Only the theoreticians really understand it. Making my point. But the point is that in religion, this doesn't work. Because with religious formula, even the experts claim not to understand. They make even something of a celebration of this. Now, here's a phrase that one often sees. We're not atheists. We all believe in God in our own ways. This is an extremely popular idea. 98% of Americans believe in God. But what does that really mean? Lucy thinks rock is to die for. Desi thinks rock is to die for. Lucy's thinking of rock Hudson, Desi's thinking of rock music. They don't really agree on much of anything here, do they? And the same thing is true about believing in God. The term God has so many different meanings that to claim, well, everybody, well, you know, we're not atheists. It doesn't really mean a thing. Why do people cling to this fantasy? We almost all believe in God. Why is there so much fostering guilt for disbelief? Because this is a very elegant adaptation of organized religions. It spreads very well. The religions that don't have this feature don't spread as well as the ones that do. Nobody had to invent it, but it plays a huge role in fostering, in keeping robust the various religious creeds around the world. And here's the one that really bothers me the most. I found this, I took this picture driving up to my farm in Maine. Good without God becomes zero. Very cute, very clever, nice bumper sticker. Hey, it's subtraction, folks. Yeah. And I think it is the greatest falsehood on the planet. I think if there's one thing I want, you know, I know I am preaching to the choir today, and I'm delighted to be able to do it, but I want to suggest to the choir, my brethren, that you go out and start spreading the counter meme and resisting the presumption that you can't be good without God, that because you've got religion, you're automatically morally superior to everybody else. I think... Thank you. Do not let that presumption pass unchallenged. I think we simply have to remind people that some of their best friends, some of the people they admire the most, some of the people that are most engaged in this world are atheists and agnostics. And the presumption that somehow believing in God makes you a morally better person is an idea that has no basis in fact whatever and should not be accepted without demurral. You don't have to insist that it's false. You just have to insist that nobody knows that. That is not an assumption that you are entitled to in any reasonable discussion. Now, finally, I just want to end with a few other points. Religions are powerful forces in people's lives, and as I said at the outset, they're brilliantly designed. When we understand their design, we can see better what we might do or should do to revise their design to improve them. And in the meantime, what should we do? Since I'm saying that we haven't done the science properly yet, we don't really know enough about it, I would be contradicting myself if I now listed a whole bunch of policy proposals and said this is what we have to do, because policy's got to depend on getting a better, clearer sense of what religions are. But there's one policy proposal that I do put forward in my book, and I'm deadly serious about it, and I want to spread it as widely as I can. And it's this: we should have more education on world religion in the schools. For all children, in public and private schools and in homeschooling, we should have a national curriculum on world religions. Now, history, creed, ritual, music, symbols, ethical commands, and prohibitions. All of it. And how are we going to produce this curriculum? In collaboration with representatives of the various religious groups, to be sure. They get to say what they want to be in the curriculum, but we get to look closely and make sure that it included is anything that is manifestly true, historical fact that they might wish weren't true or they might wish not to have known. But we're going to allow them to put whatever great things their religions have done, fine. They can't just do that. They've got to include the bad things too. This is going to be factual, not evaluative. It's not going to be proselytizing. It's going to be just facts. Now look, we already do this. We say, you've got to teach your kid reading, writing, arithmetic, American history. And I think we should also say, and you've got to teach them this curriculum in world religions. As long as you teach them that, you can teach them anything else you want. I'm going to be really libertarian about this. You can indoctrinate your children with any religious doctrines you want as long as you also give them this. Now, it's interesting that this proposal has been described by, in one review, San Diego Roman Catholic newspaper as totalitarian. And in another review was described as hilarious. I submit it is such a clear, no-brainer extension of principles that we all claim to know and love. Informed consent. Democracy depends on informed consent. Misinformed consent or ignorant consent is not worth a coin flip. Now, parents are not owners of their children. They are stewards of their children. They have a responsibility to the rest of us. They can't keep their children in prison. They can't lock their children in dark rooms. That's child abuse. I submit that enforced ignorance of these straightforward facts agreed to by everybody, that enforced ignorance is a form of child abuse. Thank you. Now, you know and I know that there are going to be a lot of people that just hate this idea. Just very patiently ask them to tell you why. What is wrong with this? What is wrong with this? I don't think they have a non-embarrassing answer to that question. I think the only answer they can give you is, we reserve the right to keep our children ignorant until we have so indoctrinated them that they will be unable to see these facts for what they are. If they have any other justification, I'd like to hear it. I'm quite prepared to listen, but I haven't heard anything good yet. Thank you very much for your attention.
And then we're going to do the book signing, and then after that we're going over to Burger Continental, which is a restaurant on Lake just north of California, west of here where we are at. So Dan will be there. We will be solving the great questions over adult beverages. Best way to do this, and so if the line is too long, get your book signed, or you want to ask another question, we can do it there. Dan, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to try to keep my answers short. Please keep your questions short, because I think it's probably pretty hot and sticky in here right now.
Okay, let's talk about world religions. Buddhism, Taoism, Shinto, Confucianism. They don't believe in God.
Yeah.
They don't even believe in beliefs. So this seems to be very powerful counter-examples of what you just said today. What is the definition of religion then?
Yeah, good.
Is belief really that all that important, or is something else more important? Because what is important for these religions is to be practiced, doing something, believing in something.
In the could people hear that? He points out that Eastern religions tend not to have either belief in belief or belief, in some cases, belief in God. Or they don't have a notion of faith, for instance. And I think that in the early going, I give a definition of religion, a tentative one, and say, look, it doesn't matter too much exactly how I draw the line, because I'm going to be looking both sides of the line in any case. But for me, for my definition of religion, religion involves a social institution where the adherents profess or avow belief in a supernatural agent or agents whose approval is to be sought. Now, there are things which look very much like religions that don't meet that criterion. And I think that's your point is well taken. In a sense, they're like religions, but they're not quite religions. And they do fall under the phenomena that we have to look closely at. But I'd also say that those Eastern religions, which I don't know all that much about, but I have been able to determine that, in effect, every major religion has its Unitarians. There are sophisticated Buddhists and sophisticated Shinto and sophisticated Sikhs and Jain and so forth that, in a sense, don't believe in God. But every man The unsophisticated believers do. They have a whole panoplies of deities and supernatural agencies that they pray to, that they make sacrifices to. But the point is, it's a good point. Yeah?
We are animals who have evolved enough intelligence to have a great deal of difficulty accepting death. And with that comes the imperative for afterlife, which gives rise to not only religion, but a lot of pseudoscience and so forth and so on. And I think this is linked to the gentleman's question as well, or his point, in that many religions that don't believe in God or believe in God do have some
believe in the afterlife, yes.
In the afterlife or
yeah.
regeneration of some kind.
You're right, and I talk about it in the book. Yeah, so what question?
Suppose someone claimed they believe in God, but you suspected now they believed in belief in God.
Yeah.
What kind of questions would you ask them to ascertain the difference?
Well, some people, how would I go about testing somebody who claimed to believe in God when I suspected they just believed in belief in God? I discussed that at some length in the book, and in fact, it's a pretty tricky thing. If you do questionnaires with subtly different questions, you can sometimes bring this out. There's some interesting work on questionnaires that's been done. I've been doing some with my graduate students and postdocs. Our results are not yet sufficiently clear to publish. There's all sorts of fairly devious ways you can get at this, actually. Yes?
Is there a physical place in the brain, a chain of molecules that can be pointed to as the source of God?
Is there a place in the brain for God? Well, you know, first of all, some years ago, a few years ago, Dean Hamer wrote a book called The God Gene. And I discuss it briefly in the book because although I think that book was sort of very simplistic and sort of sensationalistic, he's probably onto something. And it's not so much a place in the brain as a neuromodulator imbalance or balance, which the sort of relative concentration of this, for which there is genetic variation in the human beings, may indeed be, for instance, the sort of thing that would evolve in response to the hypnotizability issue. But first of all, as a materialist, as somebody who spends most of his time working on, how the mind sits in the brain, yes, there's a place. If we put you in the scanner and asked you to think about Jesus, yes, there'd be a place that lights up. There's also be a place that would light up for jet ski, and Jew, and Jeremiah, and everything else. And they wouldn't be all in alphabetical order either. That's no news. The question is whether there's, as it were, dedicated machinery for deities. I don't think there's any evidence yet that there is, but I think that a more subtle and complicated story about brain differences will soon be. But it's way too early for that. We've got to figure out how you can think about the corner drugstore and hamburgers and the road to Paris before we worry about how you can think about God. Right now, using scanners to study religion is a little bit like trying to figure out how a chess-playing computer works by using a voltmeter. I think that'll be the last question, okay? Thanks. Thank you. But asks us, how does this
Well then, that was Daniel Dennett. Hey, I just want to thank Bulldog for muting and staying muted throughout the talk. Thank you very much. So what I'll do now is I'm going to go to the Hangout and see if we can bring in anyone who wants to make any comments on the movie. See who's in there. So far I see Bulldog. Just Bulldog. The Hangout is open if anybody is interested in coming in and is on the list and has the link. Do come in. If you'd like to come in, just put a request out there in the YouTube chat and we'll get you in.
Sidney, you've got to turn the OBS off or whatever. It's really scratchy. Sidney, you've got to turn the OBS off or whatever. It's really scratchy. Sidney, you've got to turn the OBS off or whatever.
Bulldog, come in, Bulldog.
Turn the YouTube off, Sidney. And you got a lot of feedback.
All right, hold on a sec. Turn the YouTube off. Yeah, I don't have a YouTube running.
I can hear it playing back. Turn the YouTube off. That's better.
I don't think it was playing me. It wasn't on my end, I don't think.
I don't know what end it was coming through, but it's stopped now.
It's gone, right. Thank goodness. So, yes, it was an interesting outside chat there during that talk.
Yes, I think why don't you put the link in the YouTube chat and get that Nana in here? Maybe he can explain himself a bit better.
You know what? I think I'll do it, but I think that he's not gonna come in. But I'll give it a try. Hold on, let me find the Nana, you gonna come in? Huh? Nana, come on in. Here's the YouTube chat for everybody who wants to come in and be a gentleman about it. All right, Nana, come on in.
I think he's calling him a fake professor. How do you become a fake professor? How do you do that?
It's easy. You go to a fake university and you spend fake 7 or 8 or 10 years studying, and you get a fake doctorate, and you become a fake lecturer about a fake subject, and people call you fake professor. Simple.
All right.
Yeah, okay. There you go.
It's done. Jesus, I think I might become a fake professor myself. I don't know.
Everyone seems to be doing it.
Well, he claims that he's fake. You know, I thought, how do you become a fake professor? And now that you've explained it to me, it's quite obvious that that's how you've got to do it. I'll just go to school for 10 years, right? Get my fake certificate. Yeah. And then I'll go to a fake college.
Yeah.
And I'll teach fucking propaganda with my fake professor. Yeah.
That's it.
And then and the audience, which I don't know if you noticed, that they started clapping. So obviously, getting a fake professor certificate obviously works because everybody was clapping. It wasn't like anybody was going, you've done a shit job. They all clapped. No, so obviously you've done a good job.
Being a fake professor will attract a fake audience. I think.
So why can't Nana come in here? He keeps going, nah.
It's okay, he'll come in if he's got any guts. Maybe he's
he's downloading. All right, okay, he's downloading.
Downloading what?
He's downloading the plugin. The plugin to come into the Hangout.
What the hell do you need the plugin for?
Oh, obviously update. They'll download the plugin, And then it'll say, oh, you know, it's got me blocked or something like that. I don't know. I don't know.
I think he's probably using Windows 98, and that's probably why.
Oh, the latest version. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Guy's on the ball, dude.
What's he doing with the latest version?
Well, he's probably way up. You know, he's probably way up there with the techie crowd, nerd. Got to get everything new.
Because he claimed that, you know, like science has got nothing to do with computers. So obviously, well, people just picked up things and plugged them into something, and it just fucking worked. You know, like no science necessary.
What's this plus? He said science is going to do the computers. That is the one of the fakest statements I've ever heard in my life.
You know, well, how do you build a TV set? Oh, I don't know. Maybe you go to the fucking garden shop and the hardware shop and just fucking grab some bits and pieces and put together the TV. You know, no science required.
There you go.
Transistors, anodes, cathodes. They don't require any science. That's not science. He's using a computer which requires no science whatsoever. The internet requires no science,
None. You know what I think? I'm pretty sure that the reason the internet exists is through prayer, because everybody prayed so hard at the same time for the internet to appear that it just magically just one day appeared through the force of prayer.
Oh, well, look, obviously prayer works, otherwise all these people wouldn't be going to church every week. It's, you know, it's like, you know, like, for instance, like, well, you know, when you're on a good thing, right, you know, you don't want to fucking give it up, you know what I'm saying? Like,
well, hold on a second. Hold on a minute. If you say prayer works and all these people are going to church every week, okay, let's take a look. The number of people who went to church every Sunday in July 1940, in July 1950, in July 1960, 70, 80, etc., etc., etc. Let's have a look over the years, over the decades, in the month of July, how many people went to church, and let's see if that graph, if that plot is declining or flat or what.
Well, I don't know, but I know that Christian Hillbilly, he's a glutton for prayer, right? He goes 3 times a week. So, you know, he's really fucking using up a lot of his prayers, you know what I'm saying? Like 3 a week. Whereas most people would go, oh, I'll go once or twice, you know what I'm saying? But Hillbilly, he goes 3 times because he's pushing the envelope, you know what I'm saying? With all those fucking answered prayers, you know, every week. Yeah. And obviously they must be working, as was, why would you go? You know, like, why go every week? Obviously there's a lot of people out there who are in need, right? So, you know, like, it's like, oh, you know, dear Jesus, can I have a fucking car for fucking Christmas? And then on comes Christmas and bingo, fucking car pops in your fucking garage, you know?
It's amazing.
Why would you want to waste fucking prayer on fucking, you know, anything else? And like, I hope Granddad gets better from hospital, you know, and then the doctors fix him up, and you're going, oh well, you know, Granddad got better from hospital, so, you know, like, the doctors had nothing to do with it, you know, it was fucking, you know, God fucking fixed him up, you know.
God, Amazing.
Oh, absolutely, you know. Oh, hang on a second. What's going on here? What's going on here? Oh, for Windows XP, Mac over Linux does not support Windows 10. I don't know. See, there's his. Well, I'll tell you what, no. What you want to do, right? And I'll say it now. Why don't you fucking pray? Right? That'll fix the problem. Yeah. No science required. Just fucking pray. I'll tell you what, no. What you want to do?
He's in.
I'll say it
Testing.
Why don't you fucking pray? Right? That'll fix the problem. Yeah. No science
Bulldog.
required. I'll tell you what, man. Turn the fucking YouTube off. Hang on, let me do it. I'll turn it off. You watch this. I'm praying to God that he gets muted. Turn the fucking YouTube off. Hang on. There you go. See? There you go. See? There you go. That's my answer to prayer, Sidney. Answer prayer.
Turn the volume of the YouTube channel off, please.
There you go. There you go. That's my
okay. Why?
Turn the volume down of the YouTube channel. Switch it off. We're getting the feedback.
Okay.
You're gonna mute you until you get it right, dude. It's not fair on us. It's not fair on the people who are watching. It's not fair on the people who will ever be watching in the future, and this will be saved. Don't forget, for all of eternity. It's just not fair.
Even in heaven, even in this heaven. Now, do you want to ask him some questions now, Sidney?
Well, when he figures out that he should be switching off the YouTube volume.
Okay, is Bulldog done ranting?
If you can you understand that we want you to turn down the volume or switch off the volume of the YouTube video or the YouTube feed?
Okay. Is Bulldog? Okay, let's do this. Okay, there we go.
Thank you very much. Okay.
I had to change a browser. My browser was acting up.
Not a problem.
All right, so now that that's all resolved, thank you for your patience. And Bulldog, if you could kindly not rant, we're going to take this in a logical fashion.
Okay, this is a moderated room, so I'm going to do the moderation. And the way it's going to work is that if somebody's got the floor, they have the whole floor. They have the right to not be interrupted until they're done. But it works both for you, Nana, and for Bulldog, the same rules. Okay, do we all agree?
I'm okay with
I agree.
Okay, now the question is, who wants to ask the first question?
I'll mute myself.
Go ahead, Donna. Ask your question.
Well, I don't have any questions. I'm just okay. So basically, the first thing I heard was something about praying. Let's see here. We're gonna have to break down praying, because praying is a much higher functioning process, and I think everybody just takes it. They don't take it very seriously. It's not something that's whimsical, that we just simply have it as a part of our human evolutionary process, whatever people call that. It has a purpose. Otherwise, people wouldn't be doing it. People know how to pray even without being learned or taught how to do it. So I guess what I want to know is, what exactly is this thing that Bulldog wants to know about prayers?
Oh, the failure, the ultimate failure of prayer. That's what I want to know about it. Like, you know, there must be a lot of disappointment when people leave the church after praying all day long and they come home and none of their prayers have been answered.
Okay, so the first thing we need to do is what you said is, you made a statement and you said that praying is basically a failure. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so first of all, we're making an assumption. So we have to first take into consideration that the word failure is very subjective. Okay, so now let's go ahead and break it down to the fact that you mentioned churches. As you can tell, that, you know, the human race, it's not just churches. It's obviously mosques, temples, and a lot of other buildings on the face of the earth. Praying is done all over the world, whether they're building or not, and it clearly means something to people. I will, however, agree that praying for most people is very artificially done and not genuine, and once again, out of ego, to feel good about themselves, because they don't truly know what their intentions are for the prayers that they're making. Does that help you a little bit?
No, you've helped me nothing. All right, all you just babbled on and said, oh, people don't understand what prayer's all about, right? So basically, you're moving the goalposts and saying, oh, because everyone's doing it wrong, right? That's why their prayers aren't being answered. And obviously, you know how it's supposed to be done. That's the way I see it.
Well, first of all, the first thing we need to understand about prayers is that prayers have to be done genuinely. There has to be a motivation and intent of goodwill. Otherwise, it has absolutely no purpose. It will not help you in any way, shape, or form, spiritually, physically, whatever's going on in the mind, body, and soul. Obviously, you know, when people pray, there has to be a true, genuine intent deep down within the root of their cause, their being, to be praying for something that actually matters, something that will bring.
Yeah. Okay. So if I told you that people prayed for people, you know, like 20 people prayed for 10 people in hospital to get better, right? Would that be a genuine attempt?
we will never know, because the thing is, a prayer is technically, a prayer is supposed to be it's a personal journey. But if 10 people, let's say you claim, pray for somebody to heal in a hospital, we don't actually know what's going on in the heads of the people that are praying toward that one individual and what their true intent is for why they want that person healed. You see, it's a good thing that we want someone to heal or to be free of cancer or to rise up and stand again. But if it's done out of ego, and if it's done out of testing, a higher power, if you believe in one or you don't, or it's out of seeking some mechanism to make you feel better about yourself because you want proof for something, then no, then of course it will not happen. Because
okay. So because it won't happen, why did the people participate in the experiment in the first place?
Well, we have to go back to the concept of experiment. What exactly do you mean by experiment? Give me a situation when you mean by experiment.
Oh, okay, then hang on a second. I'll give you a website where you can read up all about it, because they've already done this experiment and they've done it numerous times with numerous people. And I'm not talking about 1 or 2 people. I'm talking about, like 100 Christians. 100 Christians, right? They all stepped up to the plate and they all prayed. And guess what? It actually, believe it or not, in one of the experiments, it had a negative effect by around about like 2 or 3, 4%, which is, it's not conclusive anyway, So, what I'm trying to say is like, the people who were in hospital, right, none of them got better through prayer, right? Well, are you familiar with the double-blind experiment?
No, I'm not. Go ahead and explain. Okay,
like it's a bit like I'm going to give you a pill, and this is going to make you feel better. But really, like for instance, say you've got a bottle of pills, and there's 20 pills in there, and then I've got another bottle of pills, and there are 20 pills, but they're only sugar pills. But you don't know which one's which, right? So that's what they call the double-blind experiment. So they know that like you can't trick them, and they can't trick you because they don't know any better. So when they were doing the experiment with the people in hospital, that's what they actually done, the double-blind experiment. So the people, there was people in hospital who didn't know they were being prayed for, and there was people on the left-hand side knew that they were being prayed for, right? So, like there was no ambiguity between, the people who were sick in hospital. So they got all the Christians together, right? Now you can turn around and say, oh, maybe they're all phony Christians or whatever, right? But they've done this experiment more than once, and no one got better. Nobody.
Okay,
nobody got better.
So what the concept that you're explaining? The concept that you're explaining, I'm familiar with. I was raised, it was called the placebo experiment. Anyway, the thing here is that, okay, so here's the thing with pills. Okay, so there's some pills that have absolutely nothing in them and people take them, and others actually have ingredients in them that are supposed to do, change on a psychological level, the chemistry in your brain, correct?
Yes, yes, it's the placebo effect. That's exactly right. And that's why they use the double-blind experiment. So the person who's taking the sugar pill, they don't turn around and say, oh, this is a sugar pill. They say, no, this pill's going to make you feel better. So that's how they do so they know it's not a placebo effect. So that's how they test things. And that's exactly how they did it in hospitals. Now, this experiment wasn't just carried out once and stopped.
Oh, right? So this has been going on for decades.
No, well, it depends. Like it's sort of like the Christians they were the ones who actually wanted the experiment to go ahead, and it was all monitored, right? So there was no cheating. There was nothing, like, oh, I'm going to give this guy in hospital some medicine so he gets better to make it look good, right? Like the nurses in the hospitals, the doctors, they didn't even know what was going on. Right? They had no idea. It wasn't like they knocked on the door of the hospital to say, we want to do an experiment. That experiment has been conducted, and now the Christian churches and things like that, they don't want to do any more experiments because they know the failure. Well, the failure rate is an embarrassment, the embarrassment and the failure.
Well, they should be embarrassed, and I'm going to go ahead and Here's the thing. Of course they should be embarrassed.
But that proves my point. Okay, they might be embarrassed, but and you're trying to say, oh, yeah, so they should be. Yeah, but they got embarrassed because their God didn't come to their rescue.
But this is not just about, but this is actually, if you really think about it on a much deeper level, this has actually nothing to do with whether they're Christians or atheists or whatever it is that these people are, any group for that matter. What this comes down to is trying to figure out how the physical realm that we live in right now ties to the spiritual realm that we do not understand yet, the unknowns. And if you give somebody a placebo, as you can tell, those were obviously not believers, because if they were truly believers of God and they truly had good intentions in their hearts, then at least one of those people would have succeeded in pleasing the Creator above. But clearly they were not. So
this wasn't a one-time experiment. Like I told you, now you've turned around and says, oh, they're not true believers, right? So, you know, they didn't do the experiment.
I'm going to put myself in their shoes. Here, let's do this. If I was told to do this experiment, I genuinely believe in the Creator. However, I would not participate in this experiment for one reason, because I know genuinely, I truly do not still understand what this Creator is all about. I would be mocking and being foolish.
Well, if you don't know what he's all about, you can't make any determination on anything then.
You can. That's why we have a free will. That's why we have a conscience. That's why we have critical thinking skills. Those are all given to us so that we can slowly build up our encyclopedia of knowledge. But it's a
but that knowledge doesn't include God. That's where you fail. And the more knowledge we gain, the more insignificant God is, because now we don't have so many gods of the gaps. You know.
Well, I mean,
do you know what gods of the gaps arguments are?
No, go ahead. Explain your definition.
Oh, well, it's like when there's like something in science what we don't know, right? A lot of the religious people, Christians or whoever they may be, they all turn around and go, oh, God did it. You know, like, for instance, I'll give you an example. Let's say I didn't know how trees grew, right? And I had no clue on why trees grow, how they bear fruit, all of that sort of stuff. I've got no idea. And then you come along and say, oh, well, God knows. You know, that's like or lightning strikes, you know, like, oh, that must be Thor. Oh, I don't know how lightning is created in the sky. Oh, because I don't know anything about it, it must be God. And he must be angry because he makes a big loud bang every time he strikes. That's a gods of the gaps argument. And believe it or not, right? Years ago, I don't know if you know your history, people did worship, you know, Thor, which was lightning, because they didn't know any better. But now we know how lightning is created. We know that. So that gods of the gaps has been closed. It's dead and buried. The experiment.
It's not dead and buried, because you know I understand.
What do you mean it's not dead and buried? Do you believe in Thor?
Well, give me a second here. I understand that humanity for a long time has had to educate themselves and increase their intellectual spectrum of how they think and see the world. But just because you know, I mean, you could have the highest IQ, but there will be instances. You have no proof to say that there are not any instances when God can intervene and use lightning or thunder or whatever it is that happens to prove a point in a very transparent way to
I'll tell you what, I can prove it. I can prove it because when it's summertime, there's no lightning, so it's obviously God chooses, winter, autumn, summer, spring to make his appearance. And I know when he's not going to come around, and that's in the middle of summer. So you know, it seems that summer, the heat must be a bit too strong for him to come around and blow down that lightning strike that you're talking about.
How can an all-powerful creator be bothered by something called too hot in the summer?
Well, he can't be all-powerful then, so therefore we know how lightning's created, right? Let me ask you a question. How old do you reckon the age of the Earth is?
Well, the Earth is definitely not millions of years old. Based on my 20 years of research, I'm guessing no more than 2,000 years old.
2000. Well, you know the bug. You know. Have you ever heard of a book called the Bhagavad Gita? That was written 3,000 years ago. So how do you work that out?
Well, first of all, you have to understand that the farther the knowledge goes back, when you find documentation or hieroglyphs or anything on any surface, first of all, we could be misinterpreting that information. That could be one. Two, somebody could have also made an error while putting it on the surface that they themselves put it on. There's two. I mean, we can't. You have to understand that the farther back you go, there's a higher percentage of error. So therefore, we have to logically.
I'll tell you, so in other words, what you're trying to tell me is carbon dating, right? Because we can carbon date things up to 50,000 years old. So what you're trying to say to me is carbon dating doesn't work. And everybody who uses carbon dating, everyone in the world, you know, everyone in America, New Zealand, Australia, China, Japan, England, everywhere, they're all doing it all wrong. Everybody on Earth is doing carbon dating wrong.
Carbon dating works up to the point of intellectual, how do I say it? Once a scientist becomes a scientist and starts studying carbon dating and starts doing the experimentations on it, from that point in their experience and on, it is valid. But they cannot take, you know, 3 million years ago from someone.
No. I just told you. I'll tell you again. Carbon dating only works up to 50,000, right? No more than 50,000, right?
Right.
So you just threw in millions, and I just want to correct you. I'm not saying millions, right? Carbon, that's a different dating method.
Okay, go ahead.
So what I'm trying to say is, you know, it works up to a point, right?
Yeah,
you know, we've got other methods for dating things older than 50,000, but we'll stick to things what are 50,000 and less. So what you're trying to tell me is, it doesn't work, but everybody around the world uses it. So all of these people in classrooms all around the world use carbon dating, and they're all doing it wrong, and they're all stupid. All of these people are just plain and outright.
If the first person did an experiment on carbon dating, and they started categorizing all the molecules, you know, in that ice, and they can trace it back to certain life forms on the planet. You know, they can.
No. That's not. No. You don't know how. You're not. That's not carbon dating about tracing back things, right? Carbon dating is measuring. Like carbon dating is the breakdown of carbon, right? Because you know, like everything breaks down. Every life form on Earth, right? Yeah. Every life form, every plant, animal, everything that's ever lived and died is made up of carbon.
Right.
Right. Okay. Now everything breaks down at certain rates.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like for instance, you know, and when it breaks down, you can measure that, right? Because it breaks down at certain speeds, right?
Right.
Like
that will also.
And they know the speed that it breaks down. For instance, like if I was to go to the cemetery and dig up some bones, you know, 1,000 years old, and take them into a place to carbon date them, and they don't know, but I know how old they were because there's a date on the cemetery. You know, like when you die, it says, "Oh, died in 1492 or whatever." You know, my great grandfather Freddie, right? And I could dig that bone up, and I know the date. And I take that in, and I say, "Can you carbon date that?" And they carbon date it, and they get it within 5%, right? Because they've got a plus or minus percent, which is not too bad for carbon dating, right? Mm-hmm. And they keep getting it right all the time. That means it must work. You understand that?
But I don't
Like for instance, I can tell you how old a tree is, right? And I don't have to use carbon.
You have to define a tree. There are two types of trees, technically. There's the carbon-based and there's the silicon-based. There's no silicon. I don't know of any silicon-based trees. All the trees that I've ever known, right, are all carbon-based. The Grand Canyon, that was a silicon-based tree valley that has been stripped and cut up all its natural resources.
Yeah. The valley might be silicon, but the trees aren't.
No, the valleys themselves, those rocks that you stand on when you go downhill, those were at one time made of silicon, but they have been stripped.
No, the Grand Canyon, right? The Grand Canyon itself is silicon. Yes, rocks are silicon. Or most rocks are all silicon. Okay. Yeah, but rocks aren't trees. I think that's where you're getting confused with rocks and trees.
No. The original tree, way back, was a silicon-based tree, because we all know that.
No. It was carbon-based tree.
No, it was silicon-based tree.
No. I'll tell you. Look, the imprint that it left inside the rock, right, is an imprint of what was the tree. It's not a tree anymore. It's an imprint. It's a bit like when you get a bit of plasticine, right? And you put your finger in it, and you take your finger out and leaves a fingerprint. Well, the tree that was alive is not there anymore, and it's left an imprint. Okay, so therefore the imprint's in the rock, the rock is the silicon. Okay.
No, see, you think it's that simple. It's not that simple.
No, it's not. It truly is that simple. You know,
valley.
It really is that simple.
The valley, which it looks like a rock, it has the appearance of a rock, which is silicon.
It is a rock. The Grand Canyon is a silicon valley. Yes, it's all made out of rocks with layers and layers. And inside those layers are fossil.
We're heavily I don't know what's the term for it. The trees were heavily fortified, were heavily dense, filled with silicon, that deeper and deeper into caverns of the flat Earth, which I'm going to say that, goes into the crystal caves. You don't seem to understand. Our planet originally was, I know you're going to think this sounds silly, but it originally started just like the movie The Avatar. That movie's purpose was nothing more than sheer mockery of the absolute truth. Our planet was just like that movie. Everything was connected through a silicon-based neural pathway, and now it has been stripped to a carbon-based, what I don't consider trees, I just consider them shrubs, because that's really what they are. Just because they're taller than us doesn't make them a tree. They're nothing but shrubs that have been replaced because they're far easier to replace. And you can't replace a silicon. It's fine. It's limited. Once it's been stripped, it's gone. You can't replicate it. So I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, but you're not telling me anything. You're telling me mumbo jumbo because you don't understand how carbon dating works. Okay, right?
Carbon dating. Listen. Doesn't prove anything to me. It doesn't. All it tells me is that
you don't want it to prove it. Look, you can't carbon date a rock. Okay, stop. You know, you're getting confused with trying to carbon date a rock. You can't carbon date a rock. You can only carbon date carbon. That's where you're getting.
Oh yeah, but that's carbon dating. Maybe we should be also.
I told you before. Everything what's lived and died is made out of carbon. Okay. Right. Now, let's just say, you know, when you burn wood, for instance, right? It turns into carbon, right? And you can burn that away until it's all gone. Okay.
Well, it's not always going to be all gone. There's always going to be carbon left for whatever reason, because we can visually see it. No matter how much you burn your fireplace filled with logs, that crap that you see at the bottom, you can't completely remove that. It can never disappear completely. It will always be there.
See what you're trying to do is debunk science, right? But science is already set in stone as far as carbon dating is concerned, right?
Science. You see, you're seeing science from a perspective of that science is a concrete concept, that it leaves no room for critical thinking. That it's just simply you have to take it as fact.
No, see, you got to take your biblical glasses off when you do science, okay? Right?
Biblical
That's what you've
glasses.
got to do.
I don't need a Bible.
Excuse me, gentlemen. Hold on. Whoa. We did agree that we're not going to interrupt anybody. Bulldog had the floor, and Nana, you interrupted him, and it's not the first time, so I'm giving you a yellow card warning, a caution. Please don't interrupt until he's done, or both of you.
Okay, I have one statement to make, a quick statement.
Go on.
If you're going to attack what I am and what I believe, then this is not a dialect. This is nothing more than a squabble. So either you speak about just the idea, the concept, and don't attack my nature, or there's nothing to discuss.
No, I'm attacking your ideas, not you personally. If you've got a bad idea, I'm going to attack it. It's as simple as that, right? If it's a bit like, for instance, if you tell me, like cars aren't any good or whatever, I'm going to attack your idea because cars work, science works. That's why we've got computers today. Because they work, right? And they're all based on science.
You made a statement that computers aren't science. That is a statement that we can.
Science. Cars are not science. Toothbrushes are not science. They are nothing more. No, they've already been created by something that has already programmed all the possibilities. We are simply discovering.
Is engineering not science?
No, engineering is simply discovering on a much deeper level all the components and how to rearrange them. That's all it is. That's it.
So that's not important.
Well, if you can't rearrange anything,
it's
that means
Lego.
you're a dummy.
It's building Lego.
Okay.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Excuse me. If you're building, it's not building Lego. When you're building a bridge, which is engineering, you have to know things like tensions and
forces
and all sorts of. It's not exactly building Lego. Don't minimize it. Don't minimize it into something that only the dumbest of dumb can sort of make sense of. Building a bridge is not Lego.
Right, it's more complex. Obviously, the bigger, heavier...
Engineering is not Lego, okay? When you build a bridge, there's a lot of education behind the person who's designing the bridge and taking a lot of things into consideration.
Yeah, but
there's a lot of mathematics, there's a lot of physics, there's a lot of perhaps chemistry when it comes to the construction materials. But it is
tensile. But the concept of tensile strength is a discovery. You discover that there's this concept that allows you to understand that now, if you start playing with it, no, that's not science. It's a discovery. That's all it is.
It's a discovery.
We call it science. We call it science because we want to sound smart.
Is it a creation discovery?
Creation is not discovery. Creation simply is. It's the creator made creation and then made all the possible components and all the processes. All we're doing as human beings in this existence is we're trying to figure out where everything is, how to rearrange it, trying to come to a consensus. Hopefully we won't kill ourselves in the process. We'll finally have peace and harmony.
I think Bulldog had it correct. You do totally misunderstand what science is.
No, science, it's our own term to make our egos feel good that we are smart. But we're not smart. All we're doing is we're just ants plugging along, trying to figure out how to move things around, trying to find those parts, using more and more complex modules that we put together on a microscopic scale, and then hoping for the best that we find another discovery. That's it.
No, you're throwing word salad in because nothing makes sense. I'm sorry.
What do you mean? That was clear as crystal.
Well, your enunciation was pretty good, but the actual content was crap.
What do you mean? Everything around us is nothing but building blocks. Molecules are building blocks. Do you agree?
Yeah, and?
Yeah, you said carry on. Carry on.
And what do you do with molecules? You have to rearrange them to make things called iron, silver, copper, helium. All we're doing is we're discovering those molecules.
Copper. We don't make copper. Copper's in the ground.
Copper's a natural element, exactly. So is iron.
So we discovered that one was more obvious. But if our creator had chosen to separate the particles and then make us combine them to create copper, that would have been more complex.
There is no creator, and copper is a natural element. You're making absolutely no sense.
But something had to put the copper there in the first place.
That's right. That's what star systems are all about. That's what's.
And who put the star systems there?
I'll tell you where it came from. Okay, I'll tell you where iron come from, because you think the creator put it there. We know already an exploding star, the last element it turns into is iron. And when a star explodes, it spews all of that iron all around the universe, and it bangs into here and bangs into there, and it bangs on planet Earth.
When was the last?
That's where iron came from, right? Now,
when was the last time?
Don't interrupt him. Let him finish his story. Let him finish his explanation.
Scientists already know. We already know where iron comes from. You know, asteroids what hit the Earth today. Some of them are, they're magnetic, and you know why they're magnetic? Because they've got iron in them. That's how we know where iron came from exploding stars. Now, if you want to know where all the other heavier elements come from, I can go on and tell you where all they came from as well, if you really want to know. And it requires no creator, absolutely none. We already know. So that God of the gaps theory is out the window. Carry on.
Proof for astronauts, for asteroids coming into orbit, being recorded before being tampered with, as viable proof for iron. We have never in our history have seen in a recording where scientists have literally walked up in their little cruisers or whatever with video cameras, going up to this smelting hot thing that's sitting there in the ground, recording every moment of it, doing scientific experiments on it so the public can visually see what's going on. Until that day comes, that is bogus.
It's not bogus because they still keep hitting Earth. Listen, there's people out there looking right now, and they keep finding them. Right now, meteorites, we know they hit the Earth on a regular basis. We see them for when you see a shooting star in the sky, some of them actually make it to Earth, and that is full of iron.
All right, but
that's why they're called meteorites, and they're magnetic. And the reason why they're magnetic is because they're full of iron. So how do you explain that? How do you explain that?
And how do you explain that there's no camera recordings of a piece of rock that is literally that you could not touch because you'd probably evaporate? It's so hot. There's no proof. I have yet to find a video. I've been going through thousands and thousands and thousands of videos.
What are you talking about? What do you want a video of?
Nobody has ever recorded a rock hitting the ground or running toward a rock or saying, I found my first asteroid. No one.
What are you talking about? They're already hit the ground. They're already on the ground, and they find them all the time. You know the best place to look.
No one's recorded them.
Listen, I'll tell you. They have recorded it. They have got videos.
No, they don't.
They have got videos.
Show me a viable recording.
Hey? Oh, okay. Hang on a second. Give me two minutes, and I'll find you a recording of a meteorite hitting the Earth. Hang on a second. You want video now?
No, not just hitting the Earth. Not just hitting the Earth. Somebody going up to it and actually, in detail, recording it and picking it up.
It's traveling. What do you mean going up to it? You know how fast they come in? They're coming in at 30,000 miles per hour. Something like that. That's faster than a bullet.
But somebody eventually finds it on the ground and can pick it up once it goes down.
Yes, they're finding them all the time.
No, I have.
There's a TV series called The Meteorite Hunters. They find meteorites all the time.
No. And you know, TV series, nobody should ever trust a TV series. If it's controlled by a corporation, that is not proof.
Don't trust it.
I want an everyday citizen.
Will you tell me how come these rocks? You tell me how come these rocks are magnetic then? You know, if they're not finding them on the ground, you tell me how come these rocks are sticking to a magnet? Because that's how they find them. They actually use a magnet on the end of a pole, and they touch it, and if it's magnetic, they know it's a meteorite. And if it's not magnetic, you know what they call it? A meteorong.
Show me a citizen, an everyday citizen, because there's billions of us on this planet, has walked up.
What do you mean an everyday citizen? Go on YouTube and look for meteorite hunters, and there's lots and lots of them all around America and Australia and all.
The only thing I've ever seen is
you haven't seen them, but you know, I know why you haven't seen them, because you haven't looked. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's why you haven't. I have ever seen is agencies, the FBI, the CIA, government agencies, trying to get
here we go.
As quickly as possible.
Now.
No, it's a fact. People on their own land have been removed from their property because it was under investigation. Yet
what was it only? What over what meteorites? What?
So they claimed. Yet we never got footage of the actual rock.
They've got thousands of them.
Nor did the owner of their own land.
Meteorites.
Or like a UFO coming out of the sky and just crashing.
No, I don't believe in UFOs. I don't believe in UFOs, but I know the meteorites and I know where they came from, right? And they come from an exploding star, right? Now, let's get one thing straight. And we have actually videoed an exploding star. And I'll tell you what, I know you're going to call it fake, but the Hubble telescope is actually taken pictures of an exploding star.
No, the Hubble telescope.
And you can turn around all day and say, "Oh yeah, all of those pictures are all fake." But that's your get out of jail card free. It's like, oh, I don't want to believe it, so therefore it's fake.
They're not fake. It's a Hubble telescope is nothing but a more sophisticated telescope that's been put together. Once again, building blocks to make a discovery called a telescope. Yeah. Put in a plane at a high altitude, and for a short period of time, within a certain amount of time, they can take pictures and footage to be able to study those images. That's it.
Yeah. So we know that exploding stars, the last thing what they make is iron. We know that.
How do you know?
We know.
How do you know it's an exploding star if you haven't physically seen it with your own eyes?
We have seen it with our own eyes. The Hubble telescope, has taken pictures. Yes, I have. I've watched
the telescope.
Yes, I have. I haven't stood in my backyard because it's too far away. But I use a Hubble telescope.
Okay, hold on, guys. Hold on, guys. This is starting.
And there's pictures of Hubble telescope exploding.
I just want to interject a little bit and say to Nana, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether Bulldog has gone up to the Hubble telescope and looked through the Hubble telescope's lens. Because number one, the Hubble telescope's out in space orbiting the Earth. How do you expect Bulldog to have anybody to have gone up there and actually looked at what the Hubble telescope is doing through its lens when there isn't one? It's a camera somehow hooked up to
all Bulldog has
broadcast. Excuse me, I'm talking to broadcast the images back to Earth. Don't start making things up that make him.
I'm not making
make your argument. That make your argument even. Make your argument seem that it has any merit whatsoever. You are absolutely, you're done. He's explained everything to you 100% fantastically. He said iron is the last thing that is made out of an exploding star. Why can you not accept that? It makes perfect sense to me and to you.
If you want to prove this to me, you would take your own recorder, go to NASA's building, take years or months or days or whatever.
Just stop it. Just stop. That's just, whoa. Just excuse me. I'm gonna mute you. Excuse me. I'm gonna mute you if you don't stop. But we're not fucking idiots, okay?
No,
I know. You think we are.
That's how you do it.
But we're just gonna say
actual proof.
You're interrupting me. We don't need to go up there with fucking iron meters to scientists have already done it, okay? Some scientists, let me finish. Some scientists have done it, other scientists have checked it. Other scientists have checked them, and other scientists have checked them. And some scientists have double-checked them and triple-checked it. Everything has been confirmed as fact. Stop being a fucking idiot.
If you have somebody confirming somebody else's work, but they're all within one group of people that will agree to simply agree because they are all part of some conspiracy of leaders who work together,
that's called, of course they will agree. That is called organized religion. We're talking science.
Yes, that's what it is. NASA's organized religion. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So what you're trying to say is NASA has collaborated with the Russians, right?
At first not. But now they do because now they're getting more desperate.
And the Chinese, right? And the Chinese, because they've all sent rockets up, right? Yeah. The Chinese have got rockets. The Russians have got rockets. They're all collaborating. Every country is collaborating.
Because they're getting desperate.
SpaceX, which has got nothing to do with NASA. SpaceX has got nothing to do with that. They're in cahoots with NASA.
How do you think group conformity works when you want to have power? In order to convince,
so what you're trying to say is, if I started a space program, I have to go in cahoots with NASA, do I?
No. In order to convince the world and to make sure that you maintain power, you have to include more organizations so that it looks legitimate. But all you're really doing is you're using numbers. Basically, it's a numbers game. They're hoping that by adding more thousands and thousands of people and more organizations, that they can continue their lies. But what's going to happen is they're going to run out of people. In fact, they're already running out of people because more and more people are realizing that something doesn't feel right. And you know what? One thing human beings do not make a mistake with is their instincts. And instinct will surpass everything. And the truth will come out. And it's coming out.
Textbooks, what we've got, they're all wrong, right? And you're right.
A small percentage of the textbooks and everything we learn in school is legitimate. But most of it is controlled, and most of it is not legitimate because think about it like this. I was born. I grew up. I still didn't have the critical thinking skills. I go to kindergarten, so somebody has to guide me along and teach me what they want me to learn. But if they truly cared about my education from kindergarten, they would be asking me, once I can speak to them and communicate with them, they would be asking me questions. They'd be having me explain things. They'd have me try to do the tests. They would have me try to figure out why mixing this color with this color makes this color. Because I should be the scientist all the way through college. But that's not how the world works. The way the world works is that they show us what they only want us to see, and therefore we take it through illusions and perceptions of how they manage to confuse us with the information that we were given. Because if you don't have high enough critical thinking skills, which when you're younger you just simply don't, I can fool a 3-year-old to believe that picking up a knife and stabbing his sister in less than 3 seconds. And it's not that difficult to do that with everything else on the face of the earth. So if you teach a kid to pick up a knife and say, now make sure you keep the pointed end away from somebody, that is also teaching somebody something. But you see, it's all about intent. Our school, our education system does not have our best intentions. It wants to control our intentions. It wants to make sure that we learn things the way they want us to learn things, to regurgitate how they want us to see the perception.
So when they taught you that an exploding star, right, and it explodes, and the last element that it makes is iron, they didn't have your best intentions, and they made up. They made that whole story up.
I asked my scientists. Actually, I asked all my science teachers, show me video footage of all these planets that we're seeing. Show me from start to end. And my teachers could not explain it. They could not show me proof because I wanted from start to end.
We've got Hubble telescope.
I failed. I failed science because I was.
It sounds like you did. So it sounds like you're a failure. Yes, it does. It really does. And I feel sorry for you that you're a failure. And then you think that all the Hubble pictures, you're telling me all the Hubble pictures are all fake. Why don't you just turn around and say, well, there is no Hubble telescope?
No,
you might as well just turn around and say that.
How can I be a failure? I'm self-efficient.
Well, because you've already told me. You've already said that they taught you wrong. So you're a failure because when you done your test, you would have said no, I don't believe that. So I'm going to tick no for that one, no for this. So obviously you failed.
No, well, of course they're going to fail you. They're going to fail you if you use too much critical thinking.
That's what I just said.
They want you. Of course they're going to try to fail you. There were times when I would blame, even when I was telling the truth.
You're going to tell me the fucking earth is flat.
Because it is.
How did I fucking know that? How did I know that?
There are now people. There are now channels. There are now channels with legitimate people that are studying science, just like any other NASA scientist. And they are now getting ready to go for expeditions to this thing called Antarctica. And the United Nations, by the way, was created to make sure that nobody goes to Antarctica and that nobody tries to explore from any points on our round, flat Earth to any side of this circle that we are about to venture. And they will stop them. And people are now going to record it.
That's funny. That's funny you should mention that because my sister she went on a plane flight 2 years ago over Antarctica when they first started doing flights over there. So maybe they didn't take her to Antarctica and maybe they took her somewhere else and she just got fooled.
They took her to Antarctica. but they didn't take her. They did not take her to the edge. They took her from one point to another, and you're not allowed to go beyond certain points. There are only certain camps, certain areas you are allowed to.
Why is that?
Because they do not want you to know what is beyond certain points. They never let people explore those massive 300-meter walls of ice that nobody has ever been able to see as normal citizens. They will not let you near them.
If no one's been able to see them, how come you know about them? How do you know about it?
Because people have gotten pretty close to taking pictures of them from a distance, which there's proof on, but they cannot get close to them because somebody says that they cannot leave within this many miles of the camp. And if they do, a helicopter will stop.
No, get in an airplane or a helicopter and fly over there. They can't stop you then.
Well, actually, that's another thing I'm doing some research on, is there's a problem. There's no footage of why the helicopters cannot get within a certain amount of distance of those massive glacier walls. There's something going on.
Listen, if there's no footage, how come you know about it? How come all these things you don't know about, you seem to know about? How does that work?
Because the locals that have lived there or that have traveled to Antarctica or parts of Alaska,
living there.
Or the Alaska, the tips that are also part of the...
Next minute you're going to tell me that the locals have got guns and they shoot the airplanes out of the sky.
No, but I'm also saying that Antarctica, what we have been shown, it looks like Antarctica. It does not look like Antarctica. That is a false image of Antarctica.
And you said the Antarctica, what we've been shown, is not the Antarctica. So therefore you must have two pictures, you know, which conflict with each other. I'd like you to show me these two pictures and which one's the real one and which one's the fake one.
There are honest scientists that simply want to go all the way around the edge of this thing called Antarctica, and they will not let them do it. They will not let them go and map out what Antarctica looks like.
Who's got the pictures? I need to know who are these people who have got these pictures of the edge?
The pictures of what?
The edge. You said, you know, you're not allowed to go to the edge.
Well, because we have governments that will not let you travel beyond certain points. They will not. If I were to go to Antarctica, they will only let you land in 3 major spots. There's 3 camps that you can land at, if you can afford to go there, first of all, because it costs a lot of money to travel to do this, what they call tours. And then you cannot just go out and keep walking straight in a straight line and just basically, you know, to your doom.
What I want to know is why they don't want you to see the edge. Like, what's the big deal?
Because obviously there's an unknown, and they know something that we don't, and they do not want people to know. We don't know yet because they won't let you see it. It's like the military. If you have a military
that's like saying, you know,
Area
you
51.
can't see.
Area 51. Why is Area 51 such a big deal? If it wasn't such a big deal, let people walk into the building.
I never claimed that Area 51 was a big deal. All right, I've never claimed myself. I've never said that Area 51 is a big deal, right? But I'm more interested in the edge of the earth, the pictures that you don't have, but you know about. So how is it that you got to find out about it and I haven't got to find out about it? I need to know how you've done it, and I can't find out what's on the edge. And you're saying that there's something on the edge. Like, it sounds like, is there a pot of gold there, or what's the deal?
No, we don't know what is actually there, but we know one thing. Why are we forbidden to go beyond the camp?
You're saying, I don't know, but I know.
Anybody that has been allowed to go to the camps to travel and to experience and be a scientist, even, they want to see beyond why they can only go within a certain circle.
But you keep saying, I don't know, but I know, and that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, well, you need to go do your research and find out that there's actual people.
Hang on a second. Listen, it sounds like to me you've done the research. Why don't you just post a few links and show me what I don't know?
That's preposterous. That means I'd have to go back. I'd have to go and remember all the names of the people that I watched them for their 2-hour documentaries on YouTube.
You're a full bottle on the subject.
I would have to go find those documentation. Do you realize I don't have that kind of time? I have one lifetime. My only purpose in life is not to literally write down every link. My purpose is to weed out and feed out all the nonsense and try to simply get to the root cause of everything that's going on this planet.
So all of this knowledge that you've gained, you've lost now. So that was, it seems like it was a failure from the start, because all of this knowledge that you possess, you don't have anymore.
No, just like you have knowledge, it would be a waste of time to have to write down every link and write down.
No, that's why we've got computers. No.
Every word. It would be impossible.
No, we've got computers. It's called cut and paste, and you can paste it into a Word document and say, listen, these all your pictures. You could just go like, oh, okay, I'll put this link in here, and I'll copy and paste it.
I don't need to. There's videos. You will find them if you just write in the right search terms. You will find the video.
Listen. Obviously, my computer doesn't work as good as your computer.
Do Antarctica. I don't know. Just type in Antarctica interviews or tours in Antarctica.
I haven't found the edge. You know, all of these pictures you keep talking about.
I haven't found the edge either. But I have found out that people are stating.
But you haven't found them, but you know about it. How's that? How's that work?
Because
it's like saying, I haven't found a unicorn, but they exist.
Okay, here's the thing. The reason I know that there's an edge, even though I haven't seen it yet, is because there's other proof to back it up, including rainbow.
You haven't given me the first proof to worry about the second proof to back it up. You have to give me the original proof.
There's a lot of other things. There's a lot of other.
Can I ask you a question, Nana? Why is it that Bulldog has to go to the Hubble Space Telescope to look into it to see?
Because then he will be able.
Hold on, I haven't finished yet. I haven't finished yet. You're being rude. He's got to go all the way up to the Hubble telescope to make sure that there's the other galaxies and stars and iron and all this kind of stuff. Yet you don't have to go to the edge of Antarctica to have a look to see if there's an edge or not.
No, I do. But right now, in my financial abilities, I don't have the means yet to do so. But I do know people that have organizations that will attempt to try to do it, and they will record it using their GoPros and everything else. To send back.
I'm sure they've done it. GoPros have been around for many years.
Once I see some confirmed evidence, which we all need, some confirmed evidence. Evidence doesn't mean that it's fact. It simply means that it'll give us an assertion that.
Stop it! Stop it! You're giving me a headache.
That we can organize our own tools.
Hold on. I think we've all had enough of Christian insanity. I just want to end this because you're driving me.
I'm not a Christian,
insane.
so I don't know why you.
I don't care what you are. You're driving me insane. You're talking nonsense, and you've been doing it for 2 hours. And I don't want to listen to it anymore. Why am I not? Goodbye.